I believe every mile of highway and every acre of ground has history and treasures. And I'm going to show you one that we uncovered right here at our own house. So we're at the edge of our property, and I got to show you a little something here. So we'll go for a little walk down here. Got a little bit of competition. They're doing some tree work down here, but that's okay. We'll go anyway. So down here is a back street, and I knew none of this when I bought the house. We bought this house, oh, I don't know, between 25 and 30 years ago. But anyways, and that's the old lumber yard. That was actually in service when we first bought our house, and then it went out of business. But anyways, I've known this, obviously, just the back street here in our very small little town. But if we go down here, I'll show you something, and then I'll actually show you what I learned, and then why it makes sense of what we found on our property. But actually, this right here, the street that we're actually walking on, this right here was a railroad many years ago. Many years ago. Like over 100 years ago. And if we come down here to this building, there's the river all frozen over. But this right here was actually the old train depot. And the old track, this wasn't a street, it was a railroad track. Anyways, interesting enough, so here we are on a street that, you know, just a street to me when it's all I known it as. I learned some years ago, after we bought our house for quite some time, that years and years ago, like I say, over 100 years ago, this was actually a train track, and that was the old depot. Because I always thought that was a funny place to build a building just at the end there, but the city uses what property they can to store stuff, so I didn't think that much about it. It's very cold out here and the wind makes it worse, but anyways, I'm going to show you something else. Back here toward the back of our yard, when we first moved in here, at the edge of these trees there was a pile of railroad ties right there. And I thought, that's a funny place to have a pile of railroad ties. And you could tell they were very old. They don't look like our modern day railroad ties. They look very old, but there was a pile of them there. And at this time, I had no idea that there was a railroad track at a depot down there 100 plus years ago. But anyways, railroad ties were there. I didn't think much of it. I had other things on my mind. But my daughter comes back and plays by this pile of railroad ties, and I think at this time she was probably 3. She comes up to me and says, "Dad, look what I found." And I'm going to show you what she found. Feels so much better to talk inside here. Anyways, while she was playing at the railroad ties, she comes in the house and showing, "Hey, Mom, Dad, look what I found. I found a penny." And I asked her where, and she said in the railroad ties. So we went out there. I said, "Point it out." And then one of the old railroad ties, you know, they were very old and split open. She says, "I saw it down inside here." And I looked down the crack, and yeah, I could see it being in there. It's crack about, splits inside the railroad ties. Anyways, I'm going to show you. She finds this extra large 1 cent. It's a penny from 1854. So just for comparison, this would be a penny of today, and this is the penny. Side by side, look at the size difference. So we buy a house, and here we are only going back 100 years in history, or 125 years in history, whatever. Here we find that we were right along, originally, our property was right along a railroad track with a train depot, old railroad ties piled up in our yard, not knowing why. My daughter, being busy and investigative as she was, chasing chipmunks, whatever she was doing, her eyes catch this big, large coin, brings it in, and I can't help but believe that those railroad ties, as old as they were, probably when they tore up the track over 100 years ago or whatever, and they piled them up for whatever reason, they ended up piled up behind my back corner of my yard. Maybe the owner of this house, if it was there then, which it was, maybe he wanted them for a reason, and somebody doing business back then had a hole in their pocket or pulled something out of their pocket or whatever it was, they dropped a penny and it landed in there, ended up out here, and 1854. So history is all over the place. A lot of people say, well, this house was built, or your house was built, or somebody, you know, where an old bean field was, or a farm field. Really? Okay, but what was it before it was a bean field? Well, they farmed this for 80 years. Okay, what about 580 years ago? Was it still a bean field? You're telling me no mankind has ever roamed across this? Maybe a battle took place and nobody knows about it. Maybe somebody buried something and nobody knows about it. Because history is just a sliver of a mountain of information. That's all we have. So, history is everywhere. Every mile has a story. Every acre of ground has history. And treasures are everywhere. You just got to go out and find them.